what is attachment theory and why I ended up with disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment. Well, that's a long story, Sunny Jim. But so attachment theory. Basically, scientists discovered that from infancy to age 2 years old, you create what's called an attachment style, right? And so it's basically how you attach to your caregivers, whether they were your parents, or whoever your guardian was, from infancy to like being a toddler, shaped how you would attach in your adult relationships, like how you connect with people in your adult relationships. Um, I first read the book Attached back in 2015, and I only got like scraped the surface with it, and I was like, huh, this is interesting. And it was one of those things that kind of poked at my brain where I should have paid more attention. But the book Attached doesn't go into as much detail as it needs to pertain to attachment styles. So you kind of think that you're stuck with one attachment style, but attachment styles can be flexible. And I will say, for me, okay, we'll get into me. So from childhood, I was very anxious. You can ask my mother. I wasn't ready to go to school. My parents had moved to my hometown. There was no family there. They were starting all on their own. They just had each other. Like, dad had just started in law enforcement. My mom is a scientist. So you know, it's early 90s, in the black people in their careers. They're like, we moved to a predominantly white town. Well, I was born in the town, but it was a predominantly white town. And so they were in this space where they're proving themselves in their careers, and, just trying to create a life with two under two. My older sister and I are 18 months apart. So I had to go to school when she went to school. So it was one of those things, like, even preschool, my mom moved us around a lot from that, right? Because she didn't trust it. My mom is very much no nonsense when it comes to protecting children. If she sees something she don't like, so you don't really connect with people the way you need to when you're moving around like that. And again, I don't want anybody, let me just give a disclaimer. I'm not here to put blame on anybody. Even when I start going to some of my past abusive connections, I'm not here to be woe is me. I'm just trying to give the facts of how I got here, right? So don't blame my parents. I love my parents dearly. They've done so much for me. Now, but again, like, they were working with what they had. A young black couple in the 90s moving to a predominantly white town. So you don't understand the fallout from that until, like, years later. And I would say, they've made success for themselves, but I think emotionally, for their daughters, it wasn't always tea. So let's fast forward to, like, later preschool to kindergarten, right? Again, predominantly white town. When I was 4, I had a young girl tell me, who I was really close with, tell me, you can't come to my house and play, you're black. I ended up cheering with that girl later on in high school, and it just, like, in hindsight, you see just, like, how racism shapes people. Like, that's a learned behavior. She wasn't like that. Like, we were hang tight in preschool. And so then I was in kindergarten, and I had a guy tell me, you're not American, you're black. Black people can't be American. Because we had, like, the Veterans Day, program where we would sing and stuff. And I couldn't be black because I was American. And so, I couldn't be American because I was black. And again, learned behavior. But those are the kind of things that shape abandonment. It's already anxious child. Like, again, like my attachment style was anxious because I was rushed. I didn't feel safe, which is ultimately, what's around my attachment style. Like, so I started very anxious. And of course, that transitioned into like, middle school, high school, where, um, you have secret crushes because you don't want anyone to be like, oh, yeah, Samantha likes so and so. And so, sixth grade, I had my first instance of limerence. And I'm going to get into that. That's going to be a whole other video. I think I've had 5 people who have been limerent on. I had one limerent object who was, I'm just going to say it, 20 years. Recently had to block that person for my mental health. I will get into that in the limerence video. But let's just say, okay, again, like, so those kind of things create a people-pleasing personality, which every attachment style besides secure does that, right? In their own form. Like, avoidance will say, well, I don't people please. Yes, they do. Because when you're not telling your needs because you don't want to disappoint a person, or you are avoiding the conflict, that's people pleasing too. So I have this people pleasing personality. It was that, oh, I want to be loved, I want to be loved, I want to be loved, right? And so, again, predominantly white town, I'm a black girl. You don't really have a lot of dating options. All the black guys wanted white girls. I don't really give a damn. Date who you want to date, right? I'm not that person. I have a biracial child. So, like, I've never been that kind of person where I put myself in a box dating wise. Like, I date everybody. Sagittarius Venus for my astrology people. I like people who can teach me things. I don't care what culture you're from, right? So that's what draws me in for the most part. But when I was younger, it was more so who would give me that attention because I needed to feel connected, and so it turned into one of those things where I would end up in situations where I was a secret. I was a secret to somebody. The white boys can't bring you home to mama, or the ones that could bring you home to mama, their grandma don't like you, so they're discarding you. You know who you are. You'll see it, because you tried to get back with me in college a couple times. And, those things wound you. They wound you and they shape you. So let's fast forward to my first. I'm going to call him Nathan. Okay? Nathan took my virginity. And it was one of those things where initially I met him on vacation in Myrtle Beach. And my family went to Myrtle Beach every year. I met him on vacation, and I had this sense of, this person ain't right. But it was one summer. Let me just say, I've gotten myself in a lot of trouble by contacting men when I've been bored or lonely. Don't do it. When I look back on my long-term connections or things that got me stuck emotionally, it was because I was bored. And you should never connect with someone off of that, right? Even my baby daddy. I messaged him because I was bored, and that turned into years of stuff. So, messaged him, and met him in 7th grade at the beach. Messaged him, was my 8th grade year, a year later, and that would ultimately completely change my whole life.